Welcome to InterPartyConflict, the podcast where we answer your questions so you can have the best tabletop gaming experience possible. My name is Gabe.
And my name is Jeff.
And we're going to answer your questions today. But first, I have a question for you, Jeff.
Yeah, what's that, Gabe?
How are you doing today?
You know, I'm doing okay.
Cool.
Yeah, really not a whole lot going on right now, but doing good. How about you?
Pretty good. Pretty busy. Busy with work, and I still have to get. It's by the time this episode has come out, it will probably be the end of the month. But I've still have a little bit of Patreon stuff that I have to get done this month, and I've just been so busy. I haven't had time for it, and it's looming over my head, and so on and so on. But anyway, I'll get it done hopefully.
That's the looming noise. Whoa.
That's pretty good.
That's
another good sound I like is boo. Let's just have this episode be us making
weird noises. Yeah, for the next 40 minutes.
Exactly. So speaking of Patreon, there's one thing that I was thinking about. So for the last couple months, the last 2 months, I want to say, we haven't had our Patreon Roll20 game because not many people were available on the day that we were going to do it. And then when it came around, things came up at the last minute. And then we had to cancel. Like this last one, only one person was going to be there. And so I decided, we'll just hang out for a little while instead of actually doing the game.
Sure.
And so I think what I'm going to do, because I don't know if it's because of my weird schedule. Like we usually play Tuesday evenings.
Yeah.
Maybe that's not the best time for some people. We did have at least one of our top tier patrons saying that the day isn't really the problem, but the time is, because they're on a different time zone than us.
Oh, sure. That's a good point.
And, I wish I could accommodate our patrons more, but I can only run a game on times when I'm not at work.
Right. Yeah.
So it might be because of that. It might just be that we don't have a ton of people playing. I don't know.
Oh, idea.
Yeah.
10 and up guarantees you a spot at the game. Mm-hmm. 5 and up, people who are like available at that time.
Yeah, I think what I'll do is I'll just, like, a week before we do our game, I'll send a message to all of our $5 patrons and say, hey, the game's going to be going on this day. If we don't have enough people, would any of you be available and interested in playing?
Right.
If they get back to me, then a day before or something, I'll say, like, hey, if you're still available, we've got an opening.
Gotcha.
Yeah, because I'm fine if nobody can make it, or there's not interested in the game that day or whatever, I'm fine. I don't want to feel like I'm not doing enough work.
Sure.
I don't want to feel like it's like I'm not doing my part.
Right. Yeah.
And so, if I'd like to run a game as opposed to not running a game. So if there are some of our patrons that would like to take one of those spots or something, I figure why not?
Yeah, that's definitely a good thought. I feel like that might be a better option. Mm-hmm. Just so, like, if there is only one person in the top tier that's available at that particular day, then at the very least there will be a game to play.
Yeah.
Oh, so today, I kind of heard of this before, but only I only saw like a brief little article about it. But our mutual friend Petey.
Oh yeah.
Posted something today about Wizards of the Coast is going to be publishing, I think it's a hardcover book for D&D 5th edition that is like basically a campaign setting for the like Magic the Gathering like lore.
Oh, interesting.
It's I believe it's for Ravnica. Anybody here who is familiar with Magic the Gathering or who's not, it's a trading card game.
Nerd.
Shut up. It is a trading card game published by Wizards of the Coast, so like they own,
yeah, it's all their
it's
stuff.
All their stuff, and it is like thinking about it, like I never really put that together. That like, oh yeah, they own both of those things. They totally could just put them together themselves, and they can do that. But there's I don't exactly know how like the lore of Magic the Gathering is. Like I never really paid much attention to it. Like I can like recognize some of like the main characters, but I don't quite understand any of the lore. Like there's a Patton Oswalt joke where he talks about his daughter getting really into My Little Pony,
Yeah.
And he's like, I'm really into Star Wars and Lord of the Rings, and it's like and she's just really into My Little Pony, and like she's just tries to explain it to me, and I'm just like, I can't get into another like fantasy world.
Yeah.
And then he goes into and explains in great detail the lore behind My Little Pony. So, but
pretty good.
But in the same in that same thought, like it's like I don't have time to learn the lore of Magic the Gathering.
I feel that way about so many things, but at the same time, then there are plenty of things that I get into that go completely contrary to
right. That. So like there apparently is going to be a campaign setting that is Magic the Gathering in D&D, and I think that's really cool.
Yeah,
bridges like that's kind of colliding two worlds, and I'm interested to see where that's going. The description I read that PD sent was like, there's going to be like new classes and races and stuff like that. So I'm like,
oh, like I didn't even think of that.
Like it could be like, I mean, I'm pretty sure it's going to be like a pretty in-depth thing. Like if they own both, properties, they're going to go to the wall with this thing.
Yeah. Our friend Noah Wizard sent me a message just like half an hour ago saying that apparently, I think on DM's Guild, they're now accepting Eberron content.
Because isn't it that like, because it's being published through Wizards of the Coast in a way, like you can use their Forgotten Realms stuff.
I think so, yeah.
And then so now I guess because they own Eberron now, right?
I guess, yeah. So is there going to be Eberron stuff?
I think they've owned it since 4th edition, actually.
Maybe. I hope there's going to be 5th edition Eberron stuff that's official and not just
right, yeah,
Unearthed Arcana or whatever.
Yeah, and then like all the DM's Guild stuff, which like a lot of it out there, a lot of that stuff is good. I actually just checked out the Monstrous Races.
Oh,
where
okay.
It's like, where it's every monster in the monster manual as a playable race, and like at first I was like, there's gonna be some weird stuff in here, but there is some weird stuff, but he keeps it pretty, on point. He has I don't know if the author developed the point system that they used.
Oh, I don't know.
I'm sorry, I can't remember the name of the author. I don't know if it's a he or a she, so I apologize.
Yeah, I don't remember the name offhand either, but I'll put a link to that product in the show notes.
So like there's like a point system, and it's like as long as it's within like 8 to 10 points, it's a somewhat balanced race. But like there's things like no hands is one of like the features of the race, is like it can't wield shields and weapons. So like that sort of that's like a negative to the points, but it's also has innate spell casting, and so that's an extra 2 points on right now. So they try to balance it out, and then they even give like little tips, like if you think it's too strong, get rid of this. If you don't think it's strong enough, add a bonus to this. And it was pretty neat. I was looking through those.
Oh, cool. Before we get into the episode, I want to thank Luke Hart. He was our guest last week.
Oh, yeah.
So I thought that episode was a ton of fun to make. He was a joy to have on.
Yeah, we really like having guests. So,
we might, spoiler, have another guest in a couple weeks. So keep an ear out.
Okay.
I guess.
I can't remember who you're talking about, but I'll ask you later.
Also, by the time this episode goes out, it will have been out for a couple weeks, but I finally got up the first episode of the Arcade Memories podcast.
Oh, yeah.
A couple weeks ago. So originally I was going to have it be like one really big, long, like 2-hour episode.
Right.
But then I was asking people online, like, hey, how long would you want an episode of this sort of podcast to be? Everybody gave me different answers, but the general consensus was like, probably not more than an hour.
Right. I feel like that's a good block of time.
Yeah. So I went and I cut what I had in half, and then the finished first episode ended up being about 50 minutes. And it took me a while to be happy with how it sounded. There was a few little issues I had with how my voice sounded in conjunction with the music that I was using, so I had to like re-record some stuff and everything. But I was eventually happy with the product, and I got it out. It's on iTunes. And it hasn't gotten a ton of listens, but it's gotten some listens, and I've had like people retweeting me on Twitter. We have a review on there. It's been up there for like a week, and it's got a review. Our podcast took like months and months before we got a review that was not me.
Right. I mean,
sorry, there's a little secret there. I did write a review for us trying to get it going, hoping, in a few days I can take this review down, because then, we'll be swimming in reviews, but that did not happen.
Right.
So Arcade Memories podcast, I think first episode turned out pretty good. I'll probably come out with the next one in a couple months, and then if I have any more submissions by that point, I'll keep making episodes.
Yeah, awesome.
Today we had D&D at the library.
Yes.
That was a lot of fun. We finished off the end of Treasure of the Broken Hoard, which was this like 5-part, this like 5 little mini adventures all together. And the party bluffed a giant into letting them escape with this like priceless treasure from the giants or whatever.
Good.
It was a lot of fun.
So was it like a horde, like a dragon's horde, or a horde like a for the horde?
It like dragon's horde, but it wasn't actually a dragon's horde. It was, I guess the idea is that there are these five shrines that were originally owned by the giants, and then this cult of the dragons were trying to steal them or something. And so like each adventure, the players are just behind the cult of the dragons. The first couple adventures, they like get there after the treasure has already been stolen. Then they get there like as the treasure's still there, but it's been like destroyed. And then this final one, like the treasure is still there, and they find like the bodies of the cultists that were trying to steal it.
Ooh.
So anyway, fun little adventure. And I think I mentioned last episode that next time I get together with them, I'm going to have them all level up their characters to level 3. And then they'll be level 3 characters, and we'll go from there.
Cool.
So anyway, that was a lot of fun. You want to go ahead and get into the episode?
Sure.
Okay. I'm not going to bog you down with any crazy Dragon's Horde thing today. So roll a d20.
All right.
Sorry. Okay, that's a d6, but that was a 2.
That's pretty accurate for me.
You found the Dragon's Horde.
Oh my goodness. I tripped and fell and found the Dragon's Horde.
Oh my goodness. There were so many natural 20s in the game at the library today.
Oh, yeah.
And also a bunch of natural 1s from the enemies. There was one point, these owls attacked the players. One of them, it didn't crit, but it did max damage. Did like, I don't know, 75% of one of the players' hit points.
Ugh.
And then next round, I was going to attack that player again. And I rolled like a 19. And then Steve was there, and he was a paladin. He used
a shield
his
thing.
reaction to give him a disadvantage. Natural 1 on the second roll.
Nice.
So it worked out pretty well.
Very good.
Anyway, today's item was submitted by Nathan via email, and this item is the Spirit Sword.
Spirit Sword.
So this item it's a rare item, requires attunement.
Sounds like something from like an anime.
Kind of, yeah.
Shining finger.
Oh my goodness. Did you ever watch Yu Yu Hakusho?
Yeah. Spirit
They
gun.
had a spirit gun.
Yeah.
Did somebody have a spirit sword in that, or was it just a gun?
Well, there was a character who used like a sword. He had like an energy sword that you would use. I don't know. Maybe it was like called as like a soul sword or something. I don't know. I was
so almost.
I didn't understand what anime was when I saw it. Like it was on like a Toonami or something. I can't remember. Long time ago.
All right, so this longsword shimmers with tendrils of silky lavender energy that waft up the blade.
Okay.
And a large amethyst is inset in the hilt, which is carved in airy, flowing patterns and lightly gilded with sterling silver.
Is this a romance novel?
It might be. Her bountiful... What? Anyway, it has a +1 modifier on attacks and deals 1d8 +1 slashing damage, so it is a +1 weapon.
Cool.
Also, the Spirit Sword has 6 charges and regains 1d6 +1 charges at dawn. So always at least 2 charges. Possibly 7? We'll get to that. You can use the charges for any of the following effects. First one charge. On one attack, the target doesn't gain the bonus of its AC from non-magical armor or shields, and you deal psychic damage instead of slashing.
Wow.
So that's a pretty big deal. If
for one charge on one attack, wait, they don't gain the bonus of its AC if from non-magical stuff. What,
so if their shield and armor are non-magical, their AC is basically just 10 plus their
Dex.
dexterity.
Yeah.
So that's
unless they're
pretty good.
wearing like does heavy armor like negate dex bonus in
Oh snap, it does.
Yeah, so like if they're wearing like full plate, they just have a 10. Like cuz
Oh man, yeah, that's awesome against people in full plate. Yeah, so but your sword basically passes straight through their armor, which is pretty cool. The next ability for one charge, deal a d6 additional psychic damage on a hit. So if you've already hit, spend a charge, deal an extra d6 psychic damage. You know, maybe not as good as the first one, but more situational. Definitely useful in its own thing.
Yeah.
The third ability, one charge. When you reduce a creature to 0 hit points, you can expend a charge to gain 5 temporary hit points. So that's pretty cool. You drop them to 0, spend a charge, bam, you're up 5. And then the last ability, for 2 charges, you can see creatures in the ethereal plane until the start of your next turn. During this time, you can attack them with this weapon.
Neat. Okay.
Pretty cool. So you could see ghosts.
Right.
You could see, people just walking around on the ethereal plane. You can see them and you can attack them.
Cool.
Which is pretty darn cool. Whereas I'm pretty sure they would not be able to attack you. They would be able to see you though. Now, in addition to these 4 abilities, if you score a critical hit with the Spirit Sword and kill a creature as a result, you can choose to trap that creature's soul inside the sword.
Okay, I'm listening.
You can communicate telepathically with the soul. While the soul is in your sword has a maximum of 7 charges per day. That's why it regains 1d6 plus 1.
Gotcha.
It could potentially gain all 7 charges in one day.
Okay.
And while there's a soul in the sword, it deals an additional plus 2 damage on all hits. So it gets real powerful. You cannot imprison more than 1 soul at a time in this way, and you may release the soul by performing a 10-minute ritual. If you use all of the charges of the Spirit Sword, roll a d100. On a roll of 6 or lower, the item becomes a normal longsword.
Okay.
So it is risky to use. We've gotten a few of those items lately where it's a little risky to use up the last charge of the item, but it's a d100. You got a great chance to be fine.
I feel like if you only got 1 charge left, like that one that gives you a bonus that like basically like negates their AC, like that's big. That can that can change a battle. So like if you only got 1 left and you're like, I really need to hit this guy.
Sure.
That's almost not a tough choice to make in some situations because it's like, well, what is it? If your roll is 6 or lower, so you got good chances.
Now, here's one thing that I might do if I was the DM in this case. If there was a soul in the sword, actually, here's 2 ways that I could go about this.
Okay.
If there's a soul in the sword, maybe you can't. It can't lose its power because the soul is like you lose the soul instead. Or something.
Sure.
Or alternately, if there is a soul in the sword and you roll the 6 or lower on the d100, that soul is now a ghost and it is going to attack you or something. Kind of going with the vertebral sword that we had a few episodes ago.
The vertebral sword.
Yes. So that is that's this item. There's a bunch to it. I think there's some really cool stuff in there. I love the theming. I love the image of like the amethyst in the hilt, then like the silky lavender energy that's like floating up the blade. I think that's pretty cool.
Yeah, the description was very nice, and like I do like that it can absorb the soul and you can communicate with them on a that's really cool. Yeah,
because you could find this sword and it could already have the soul of someone in it.
Yeah,
and you're like trapped in a dungeon or something, and they're like, well, I'm trapped here too. I'll help you escape if you let me free afterwards or something. Right,
yeah. It's like you find it on the body of somebody and like it's got like the soul of like one of the creatures that it just that person killed or something in there.
Sure.
It's a way to like tell a story.
Yeah.
Through finding treasure. The whole thing with like telepathic communication, like you don't need to know language, their specific language.
That's true.
It just needs to know a language.
Yeah.
So like you can't really telepathically communicate with like a tree or a
sure.
Just like a normal animal.
If it is unintelligent, if it is too unintelligent to speak, then it wouldn't be able to communicate telepathically, right?
Yeah.
Like if it can't form thoughts.
Yeah. It needs to know some form of language, and then you go from there.
Yeah. So that was the Spirit Sword submitted by Nathan. So thank you, Nathan.
Yes.
If anybody wanted to submit magic items for us to discuss on this show, or if they had stories for the funeral pyre or questions for us to discuss, Jeff, how would they get those to us?
They could send us an email at InterPartyConflict@gmail.com.
Yes, absolutely. Now, before we get on to questions today, a couple things. We have a giveaway to give away today.
Giveaway today.
Yes. So we're giving away a copy of Chapel on the Cliffs from Goblinstone. So, Jeff, who is our winner today?
Our winner today is Nathan H.
Winner. Gobble, gobble.
Gobble gobble.
Yes, and that is actually the Nathan that submitted the Spirit Sword.
Oh.
That was unintentional.
Oh.
But as
I feel like we've had that happen a few times.
We have had that. We had one person, they were the winner. They had a magic item and a funeral pyre. And again, unintentional.
Right.
I have different folders, one's for magic items, one's for funeral pyre stories. And then we roll for the Chapel on the Cliffs thing separately, and it just all lined up. So yeah, congratulations, Nathan. Thank you for entering. If anybody wanted to enter this drawing, how would they do that?
They can send us an email at interpartyconflict@gmail.com with Chapel on the Cliffs in the subject line.
Yes, there you go. And then I want to mention our Patreon. If you go to patreon.com/InterPartyConflict, you can donate to the show. And if you donate to the show, you get some cool rewards. As I mentioned earlier, we do a monthly Roll20 game. And unfortunately, we haven't been able to do that last couple months due to low attendance. But you could become a patron. If you're a $10 patron, you'll definitely be there. We'll probably work out some details about who to invite in if attendance is going to be low.
Right.
But we'll figure something about there.
Sure.
At $5 a month, you get bonus episodes. $1 a month or up, you get outtakes, all sorts of stuff. I just put up, a few days ago, I put up our commercial. Because I don't know if we ever mentioned this on the show, but I wanted to make a commercial for a while for our podcast. So a few months ago, we got together. I had written up a commercial. We recorded it. I think it turned out pretty good.
Was that the video one or?
No, it was an audio one. It was after we did the video.
Okay. Oh yeah, I do remember that. Okay.
Yeah, and but then once we had the commercial, I realized what do I do with this? How do I get other podcasts to play this? What do I do? I don't know. So we've just been sitting on it for a long time. So I figured, hey, why not just? It's on the Patreon, and it's not limited to patrons. So if you go to our Patreon, even if you're not a patron, you can listen to our commercials. It's like 40 seconds long or something like that. I actually had people tell me, "Oh, it's too long. It should be 30 seconds." Okay, whatever.
Yeah, I mean,
yeah. So anyway, head over to our Patreon and see if anything interests you. You can help out the show and get some cool stuff in return.
Yeah.
And also I want to remind everybody to go check out Crit Academy at critacademy.com. They are a great podcast. Justin, Ian, and Brandon, they come up with new and reusable content for players and DMs alike. Also, D&D Character Lab, Garen and Dan make characters and pit them against each other and debate whose is better. I just submitted some names for them to use in a future episode. Some of them are good names. Some of them are real bad names. So we'll see what happens.
Glip do a poop.
Anyway, so you want to get into this episode?
Yeah. Okay, our first question comes from Sapphire Shaddix on Reddit, and they ask, what should a DM do when a player has outrageous goals for their character beyond the scope of the campaign? So, like, the rogue wants to maybe start his own thieves guild.
Well, I mean,
using mayonnaise.
That's actually not the example I meant. So in this question, we just had this question asked on our subreddit just a couple days ago, and I think it's an interesting question. I gave a pretty long, pretty detailed response of what my thoughts were on the matter. Today, I was talking it over with our friend Noah Wizard. He was giving me his input on it, and we came to some I think some interesting revelations about the nature of this question.
You came to blows.
No. So Sapphire Shaddix was asking this on Reddit, and the example that they gave was, like, let's say I'm running a campaign, and one of the players says, "I want my character to gain immortality."
Okay.
And they gave some reasons why they thought that this was a bad idea, I guess, which I might be able to get to later on. But they're not really super important to this. But I think that's a very interesting question, because let's say immortality is let's use immortality as the example for the time being.
Yeah.
What would you do if a player says, "I want my character to become immortal"? Do you have any? I have a lot of thoughts about this. So do you have any thoughts off the top of your head?
I mean, off the top of my head, like, that's a good character motivation. Like you want to gain knowledge and power that could eventually, help you obtain immortality.
Sure.
There's a character in Full Metal Alchemist. If you're thinking the anime, it's the newer one, and it's also in the manga. But there's a character. He's like this. He's the I don't think he's the emperor, but he's gonna be like, he's like the prince who's in line to be the emperor of like a foreign land, and he shows up to like, you know, he just kind of shows up in the middle of the story going on, and he's trying to find like the Philosopher's Stone so he can become immortal.
Sure.
And that's his motivation. Like, he's got to find this thing so he can become immortal, so that he can stay emperor forever and like and help his country.
Yeah.
You know, and he's very selfish and vain, but he's got a good heart. But, you know, he's also power hungry and stuff like that. So like he's not a bad guy, but he's not, you know, he's not like the nicest guy you'd ever meet. So like I feel like, you know, thinking of that character, it makes me think, okay, that's actually kind of a cool, compelling motivation for a character to have.
Well, let me ask you though, would you consider that like a PC or is that an NPC?
I mean, I feel like it's easier for the DM to do it as an NPC because it could be going on in the background. Or,
well, yeah, and for reasons I think I'll get to later, like I think it shows up as an NPC's goal all the time. Like that is a very common one, especially in villains, but not exclusively to villains.
Yeah. So yeah, like in PCs, like that can, I don't know, like it depends on how far the player wants to go with it, you know, like how often they are pursuing that goal. Like I feel like that's a really big goal that can't be done in one session. So that is something that like the DM could keep in their minds. Like, okay, this is something that this character wants.
Yeah.
How can I tempt them with that? Like maybe something does show up, like an object that takes them one step closer to becoming immortal, but they have to like give something up for it or whatever. It could be used as a good like hook for that character.
Sure. I'll say that I don't like the idea of something like immortality as a goal for a character.
Okay.
Because I think it's boring. Sure. I think like I'm interested in the journey to get immortality.
Right. Yeah.
I'm interested in what the rest of your life is like after the campaign is over. I am not at all I'm not at all interested about the actual part where you get immortality.
Okay, yeah.
You know what I mean? Like
the immortality itself is boring, but like, you know, what are your ideas for like with that character? It's like he wants to make sure that he stays the emperor in his country so that he can, you know, make sure that the whatever other warring clans in there don't take over or something like that. I can't quite remember. Yeah. And then like, you know, his you know, quest for it is compelling because he's like, you know, interacting with all these other characters and such. So like, yeah, like you know, if it's just I want infinite hit points, that's boring.
Yeah, that's another question. Is like, well, what are the mechanics of this?
Right.
Because I'll say when I first read this post on our subreddit about, you know, well, my player wants immortality, my first thought was like, well, what's he going to do with it? Like my assumption is that this player will get immortality and then have, you know, a little while where he's like, oh man, I'm going to go crazy and I'm going to go like rob a store and fight off the city guard and everything. But like immortality doesn't mean you're all powerful. It just means you can't die. So what happens when you get captured and then tossed in a pit? And then someone seals up that pit, and now you're stuck in a pit forever.
Yeah. Then you become an NPC in a later campaign where somebody finds you in a pit.
Pretty much. Well, so that actually kind of, my thoughts are all over the place on this one. I will say that will sort of segue into, let's say another goal that is, I would say as overarching as immortality is. Let's say someone wants to become a vampire.
Okay. Yeah.
I've shared a story about a player who wanted to be a vampire, and I think there's a lot of reasons why not to allow that.
Right. I remember. So like, you know, I'd say becoming a vampire is technically a way to become immortal because you don't age as a vampire.
Right. I mean, you can. It's still pretty easy for you to die, but
it depends on your definition of immortality. Like,
right.
You know, in some literature and stuff like that, it just means that you don't age. And in other cases, it means like you just straight up cannot be killed no matter what.
Right. So if I were running a game where a player wanted immortality or they wanted to become a vampire or whatever, I would most likely let them have it at some point.
Sure.
And then, hey, your character is now an NPC, make a new character. Because I don't understand, like, I mean, I'm sure there are good ways to do it, but I feel like it requires a very skilled player to make a character that has a realistic motivation or a consistent motivation to continue adventuring after you've become immortal.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, if it's the kind of immortal where like, oh, I am no longer in the league of anyone else that exists. What are you doing adventuring? What are you doing hanging out with those people?
Right,
They're flesh bags. They're going to die next time, a piece of metal gets stuck in their heart. Just leave them behind. Go explore the wonders that the universe has to offer or whatever.
Well, yeah, I think like the cool thing about wanting immortality is it feels like it's something that's a big undertaking.
Mm-hmm.
Like it is this thing that sort of ends all conflict at least in your life.
Yeah.
So like getting to that point, does become like, all right, well now what? You won. You beat the D&D. You got
pretty much. And I mean, really, like, I wouldn't even necessarily, if you do still go adventuring, I don't necessarily think you have beaten D&D, because what are the mechanics of being immortal? You just can't die, right?
Right.
You can still get knocked unconscious, right? What happens when you get to 0 hit points?
Oh, yeah, who knows?
You don't have to make death saves, but you can still get knocked out. Like, not much really, I think, would change unless there are like additional mechanics that are unspoken in the question of, can I get immortality?
Exactly. Yeah. Like, again, it is like, if they're going for immortality, like there really aren't any game mechanics for it. Like, there's nothing in the rule set for immortality as far as I understand.
Sure.
Like, beyond becoming a lich, which still can be destroyed, or, a vampire, again, can still be destroyed. They don't age, and, liches, even if they're killed, they come back with a phylactery, but that can be destroyed, and so on. So, like, there are ways to become powerful and really, really hard to kill. Yeah. But, as far as the rules are concerned, there's no way to become immortal as far as I know. And, like, so you'd have to come up with your own rules. All of this is a lot of extra work for the DM. So, like, this does seem to, like, take away from the campaign itself. So, like, if one player's quest for immortality takes over the entire party's quest to complete the campaign. Yeah. I don't know.
Yeah. So if you are going to let a player embark on the journey of becoming immortality, realize that it is very much about the journey to becoming immortal. It is not about becoming immortal. If you are going to let them become immortal, you probably want it to happen at the very end of the campaign. Yeah. Not necessarily for like game balance reasons. I did say that, like, I don't really think the mechanics will change that much, but just because, like, once they've done it, what else are they going to do in the campaign? Yeah. Like, if you're watching a sitcom where there's the male and female character that they have that constant will they, won't they thing. Yeah. Most series will try to drag that out as long as possible, because once it happens, well, now what are people still tuning in for? What are they coming to find out? Right. Like, okay, I'll give an example. The Office. Did you ever watch the American Office? Yeah. I've just started watching it fairly recently, and there's these two characters, Jim and Pam.
Tread lightly. There's a lot of Office fans. I'm
not going to say anything. Okay, maybe I don't think I'm going to say anything bad about the show.
I'm teasing.
Just like, well, it's funny because my wife was watching and I just caught little bits and pieces, and I constantly saw like, oh, there's all these episodes where they like almost get together, right? But then they don't. And I thought, oh man, this must have like really been spread out over the whole series, because it's like 8 seasons or something. Then I found out, oh no, those are all from like this second season or something. And it turns out that like they basically, I guess spoilers for the 3rd or 4th season of the show, they get together. Yeah. Fairly early. In the grand scheme of the show.
The grand scheme.
I'm sure they didn't realize at the time that we're going to have 4 more seasons after this. But
right, yeah.
I feel like once they got together, like, what's the driving force of the show? I'm not tuning in to find out, are they going to get together today? No, because they already did. I'm sure they do come up with more stuff, more business for those characters.
I can spoil you even further.
Go for it, but I might cut it out.
Basically, there are other will they, won't theys. Like, it's not like they're the big one for sure. But then there are other ones that like later on in the series.
Oh, okay. I guess
there's a couple more pairing offs.
Sure.
That sort of thing.
So
among other things.
Sure. Ugh. So kind of in the same vein as a TV show that is trying to like get people to keep watching with this like budding romance, you want your, I'm not saying you want to keep your, I'm not saying that you should have to be working to keep your characters coming to the game. Hopefully they're coming to the game for more reasons than just finding out what's going to happen to their character.
Yeah.
But you want them to feel like they are still growing. Any point where a character feels like they are no longer growing in a story, that story, something's gone wrong with it and something needs to be reevaluated. That's why in long running series, you constantly see like the character 5 seasons in is way different than the character in the second season because their goal that they had in the second season got fulfilled and now they need a new goal. So they give them some other goal.
Yeah.
So similarly, if you're going to have immortality be an end goal or a goal, you either want to string the player along, not in a bad way, but like have like this adventure be you're getting one of the components. Like you were saying, you're getting like one of the ingredients for immortality. And then a while later, another ingredient and so on. Like keep doing that until you get to a point close enough to where you think the campaign's going to end, that then you can finally say, okay, you have it.
Yeah.
But even once they have it, that can't just be the end of it. Unless you're saying, okay, that character is no longer part of the party. Make a new character. Because if that's going to be the whole point of the character is to get immortality, then it's going to be hard to make them interesting on their own. So one thing that I said to Sapphire Shaddix was, because Sapphire Shaddix hinted at there being some reasons in their campaign that immortality might be a bad thing.
Oh, a bad thing.
Yeah. I don't know what all those details were, but if that's the case, then, I mean, that's actually kind of an opportunity to give the player immortality earlier on so that then you can impress upon them, oh, this is not all it was cracked up to be.
Sure.
Have you ever seen the movie Death Becomes Her?
I was going to actually bring that up. Yeah.
Would you like to explain what the movie's about?
So yeah, like I was going to say, like it could be that the downside is like you can't die, but that doesn't mean you can't become like damaged or dismembered or or start, your body ages but your spirit stays in it, or that sort of thing.
Sure.
Like in this movie Death Becomes Her, who's in that movie?
Meryl Streep and Goldie Hawn.
I want to say that's right, but I remember
Bruce Willis. I know it was one of Bruce Willis's first movies.
Oh yeah, you're right. I think it is Bruce Willis in that. Yeah, you're right.
I haven't seen this movie in like 20
It's
years,
been a long
but I
time.
listened to a podcast about it a few months ago.
Sure. You and your podcasts.
I listened to so many of them.
But like basically they these two women and they become immortal or something. I don't know the details, so I won't really get into them.
Sure.
But like there's sort of a catch to it. Like if their bodies sustain any damage,
Like their body can still die.
right?
If they don't die, they will remain eternally young and beautiful. But if they die, they are still in a dead body,
Yeah.
but they're still walking around and conscious and everything.
So like there's a point where is it a cannon or something goes through one of their like?
I think it was just a shotgun.
Shotgun.
We're not really spoiling anything because in the poster for this movie, it is Bruce Willis with his arm through his wife or girlfriend or whatever, holding a candelabra with his arm going through a hole in her stomach.
Right. Yeah. And so, but she's like still alive and like I think like. I don't know. There's like I don't know. I feel like there's like limbs and stuff coming off.
Yeah, there's by the end of the movie. Yeah, there's all it's
it's
a real body horror type thing.
Yeah, it gets messy.
Yeah,
but yeah, So if that's a downside, then like any injury you sustain or maybe like diseases or something don't go away. Or,
that would be bad. Yeah.
So like you get the negative effects. Like if there's anything that affects like your attribute, your ability scores or something like that. Those can't go away. Those don't go away naturally.
Sure.
Maybe magically, but not naturally.
Yeah. So if your intent is to impress upon the player that being immortal might not be a good thing all the time, that's great because you can give it to them like maybe halfway through the campaign and then spend the next few sessions making them realize, oh, I made a big mistake. And then the rest of the campaign can be them trying to similarly try to get rid of their immortality.
Right.
Either now their body is falling apart and they need to find someone that can
stitch it together.
Well, either stitch it together or just like purify them so that they are no longer immortal but not falling apart.
Right, yeah.
Or it might just be that, like, similarly to what I said earlier, they get thrown in a pit and then they're just trapped in a pit and they're alone with their thoughts for an eternity. Maybe that happens or something similar to that happens. And then they're like, this is awful. Please just let me die. Or something, you know.
They're on a quest to die. You know?
I guess. Or even just, maybe they just find out like, oh, my body was not meant to live forever. And I'm going stir crazy, realizing that I'm going to be around forever. I need to just get rid of this curse so I can just live a normal life again.
Yeah.
Or something. So you could, similar to having there be a long involved quest to become immortal, there would probably be an even more involved quest to make an immortal mortal.
Yeah.
So when I was talking with Noah Wizard about this, he put something into words that was kind of hard for me to. I felt the same way, but it was hard for me to really like quantify. And he said, to him, the goal of wanting to be immortal sounds very much like an inexperienced player.
Sure.
With any kind of a goal, whether it is asking for immortality or some other kind of goal. And I guess we are talking a lot about immortality. We can talk about some other,
I think this is
long-reaching goals as well.
This is a good example, I think.
Sure. Really, you have to try and figure out, if you can, you want to talk to the player and figure out exactly what are you trying to accomplish with this.
Right.
Because I can say, it wasn't me, it wasn't my game, but I can almost guarantee you that what this player was saying when he said, I want immortality, was, I want my character to be more powerful than everybody else.
Sure. Yeah.
And yeah, I've been in groups where people, their goal boiled down to exactly that. I've mentioned many times this story about my player in one of my games wanted to be a vampire at level 1 in a 3rd edition game. And basically it came down to, he wanted his character to stand out more than everybody else's in the way that made sense to him.
Sure.
And if that is what you want, there's other ways to go about that. So what Noah Wizard specifically said to me was like, if you can say to the player, so what you're telling me is you want your character to be more powerful than everybody else. Is that correct? That might get them to say like, oh, well, is that correct? Is that what I want? It might even be that they don't realize that that's what they want. But I mean, they might say yes. They might realize, oh yeah, that is what I want.
Yeah.
And if let's say you do ask them this and they say yes, then ask them, okay, well, what if I give that player immortality instead? How would you feel about that?
Right. Yeah.
So I mean, I don't necessarily think this is actually a way that it would go down.
Sure.
But
yeah,
if you can figure out what exactly it is that the player wants, an experienced player can have this as a goal as well. But I imagine an experienced player will have it much more as the type of goal they know isn't going to be part of the campaign. They know it is beyond the scope of the campaign, but they want their character's journey to be seeking this unattainable thing.
Right. I think an oversimplified way of putting it is, does the player want their character to be immortal, or does the player want their character to want to be immortal? Like, I feel
that's a good question.
Like, yeah, it's like if they were like, I want my character to want this, versus I want my character to have this.
Yeah.
It's like, I think that's the simplified way of like saying, it's like, okay, like, is it something the player just wants to be stronger, or like wants their character to be stronger, or do they want their character to have this like crazy, unobtainable goal?
Sure.
And like with goals like that, motivations for your character, like, like, as long as you understand that those things are sort of like really wild and like basically unobtainable, like, you could have it in mind as like, okay, like, I'm going to go through the campaign looking for ways to get this, knowing I might never get it, at least in the campaign. But, in your headcanon, basically, you can say like, okay, well, once we've beaten the campaign, we're at this level of power and, notoriety, depending on the campaign or whatever. Like, maybe it is, obtainable, in some fashion, like post game, like storytelling.
Sure. I am all for a post game immortal character.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, I've talked about many times my character Ichi. After the campaign was over, like, my own headcanon, I came up with a story of Ichi eventually becoming a god of sorts. And it's not necessarily that I wanted him to be powerful. While I was playing him, I probably did. But after the campaign was over, the campaign's already over. I'm not going to be impressing anybody with my character,
right?
Killing monsters or whatever. So with that, it was more like, I want this character's story to keep going.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like the character would also want his own story to keep going. And is there a way that would be interesting and fitting for him to have a way to keep his story going forever? And so then the whole idea is that he is a god that like just journeys, just goes on, travels.
Yeah.
He adventures. He is like the adventuring god.
Sure. Yeah.
And so,
well, yeah, because this whole thing was like this guy like told these like fables about him and stuff like that. So he wants to continue on and have. He wants more fables. Like he's collecting fables about himself,
and not just about himself. So yeah, when I played the character, he was very selfish, and then I decided that after the campaign was over, now that I am looking in retrospect back at the character, I feel like the character would also be looking back in retrospect and be like, it's not all about me.
Sure.
And so it wasn't really meant to be about him. It's less about him trying to make stories about himself and more he wants to experience everyone else's stories and help them experience their own stories. He wants to be a part of everyone's stories.
Yeah, I feel like post-campaign character development is fun. Yeah. Like it's,
Yeah, like if I was in the campaign and I was like, hey, even Chris, because Chris was one of the DMs.
Mm-hmm. Dang.
I'm just throwing all the sounds here. If I had said to Chris, hey, Chris, I want my character to be a god. I don't think he would have, but I could picture him like laughing in my face or something.
Right.
No, I mean, he wouldn't have. He was a very mature player, and he probably would have found some way to make it happen or something. But, that wasn't, I don't know. I don't think that would have fit the character at all.
Mm-hmm.
So it is Immortality is much better as an after the campaign is over type thing. 4th edition, the whole point of getting to 30th level, which was the maximum level, was that at that point, at 30th level, you become immortal. It might not be literal immortality, but in some way, once you reach level 30, you can guarantee that your character's legacy will live on somehow. A lot of classes did give you actual immortality.
Oh, okay.
Like, for example, there weren't, because these were part of the Epic Destinies, which were like the 21st through 30th level tracks.
Yeah.
The Player's Handbook didn't have very many, and then they came out with tons of them as the books went on. But
in
the Player's Handbook, one of the Epic Destinies was Demigod, where you become part god.
Yeah.
So when you get to level 30, you are a demigod, you're immortal. Another one was Archmage. At this point, at level 30, you basically become one with magic. And you might not be in a physical form, but you are now a part of the weave that makes up all magic. So you and your influence live on forever.
Mm-hmm.
There was an Epic Destiny where you literally become immortal. Anytime you are killed, you come back to life a certain number of rounds later. The more times you die, the longer it takes until 24 hours has passed and it starts over. So like in combat, you could literally be immortal using this Epic Destiny. And some of them were just like, you're such a great adventurer that literally every adventurer knows your stories. Literally every adventurer knows the conquests that you had.
Everybody takes a 20 on their history.
I guess something like that.
You.
So in the same, in not quite the same way, but in some sort of sense, your character is immortal in the eyes of all of the other people that are adventuring.
Mm.
So that was the thing about every Epic Destiny. Kind of, unless they came out with a whole bunch later on that didn't follow all the others, but like at least at the beginning, everyone was about becoming immortal in some way or another.
Yeah.
So a player wanting immortality shouldn't be 100% out of the question. I think that it should be something you're at least willing to entertain.
Right.
However, you do want to figure out what your player wants out of it. Because if they just want to be better than everybody else, well, maybe you don't need to have that. Maybe you don't need to come up with a way to make that happen.
Right.
Maybe you should try and work on the player creating a more interesting story.
Mm-hmm. Right.
I did say in response to the Sapphire Shaddix that like one thing you might want to do, just give it to him. Don't even necessarily make him wait a long time. I don't think it's going to impact the game very much. There will probably be 1 or 2 sessions where they're like, oh man, I'm going to go crazy and I'm going to go break all these laws and stuff. But as long as you as the DM are enforcing consequences.
Right.
If a person was immune to bullets, the police wouldn't just be like, oh, shoot. Okay. Yeah. See you later. Go
Right, yeah.
do it. No, they would like, I don't know, tie him up, toss him in a box, study him or something.
Yeah. They'd tackle you and tie. Yeah. They'd put handcuffs on you. Like,
sure.
you know,
I keep making all the references, but American Horror Story. Have you watched American Horror Story?
First season and third season.
So the sixth season, one of the seasons is called Hotel. American Horror Story Hotel.
Okay. I haven't seen that one though.
Is very largely revolves around this hotel. There's all these colorful characters that come in and out. In particular, there's this detective that's like following this serial killer or something, blah, 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 whatever. There's a very, very large subplot involving Lady Gaga's character is a vampire.
Okay.
And there's a point where she makes another person do it. She turns another character into a vampire. And then vampires aren't immortal they can be killed. They can be killed fairly easily, in fact. Like you just shoot a vampire and they die. But she basically tells him, like, because you're a vampire and because of your connection to me, you will be young forever. You will be beautiful forever. I have enough resources to make sure that you live comfortably. The only thing that will kill you is your own hubris, or something along those lines.
Okay.
And I think that is such a powerful thing to impress on someone who wants immortality. It doesn't matter if you have literally infinite hit points. It doesn't matter if you are immune to damage or whatever. If you think that you can't be stopped, you will be stopped.
Right.
Someone will stop you. Some army will show up and will wrestle you to the ground and put you in an adamantine coffin and then bury you under a mountain.
Right.
It will happen if you walk around acting like nothing can possibly stop you. So if a player wants immortality and that's what they want it for, I almost say give it to them.
Right.
Give it to them. Show them that is a terrible idea. Especially, let's get a little metaphysical here. When you're talking to the DM, you would not say to a DM, you cannot kill my character. Because you know what the DM will say?
They'll crack their knuckles.
The DM will say, oh, look, your character's dead. Make a new character.
Challenge accepted.
They don't even have to roll a die to kill your character. So yes, if you want immortality for that reason, something's wrong. Like you need to learn a lesson in some way or another. So, I think to an extent, just give it to them and then show them that it's not what they thought it was, and then make a series of adventures about them trying to get rid of it.
Make a monster that has an insatiable hunger for immortal beings that that has the swallow whole ability and has a strength check way higher than the immortal being can handle.
Yeah. Listeners didn't see this. My jaw just dropped because Jeff, you just made a great point. And you just gave me an idea. What if there is literally a monster that feeds on immortals?
Right.
Its whole thing. It is a weak monster, except in the presence of an immortal. It draws on the power of an immortal, and now it's the most powerful thing in the world because it is fighting an immortal.
Right.
I feel like there's something that I've seen that has exactly. I can't have come up with that myself.
More references.
I don't know.
Yeah.
So I don't want to spend too much more time on this because this has been, a large amount of the episode, but let's say you have other very, very big goals. Impress upon your players that their goals may be bigger than the campaign. So try to make it so that the campaign is about them pursuing those goals, not necessarily them actually getting their goals. Like if a player said, similarly, I want to be the most powerful spellcaster in the world. If that is going to happen, it's going to happen at the end of the campaign. It's going to be like the end of it's going to be the epilogue.
Right. Yeah. I mean, like in simple terms, it's like, you'll become more powerful if you keep going through the campaign because you're going to level up.
Sure.
Yeah, that's just it. Like you become a more powerful spellcaster by continuing your adventure and getting experience.
Yeah. So you could have a campaign where that is a player's goal. And even though they don't literally become the most powerful spellcaster until the epilogue, the campaign can still be them gathering power. Right. It can be them, finding the lost spell book of this forbidden spell school or something like that. And then it can be them like gaining a powerful artifact that lets them absorb magic into themselves or whatever. There's so many things that you can do to make the journey towards that interesting, you know? So anyway, I think that gives a pretty good primer on what to do if your players have goals that are beyond the scope of the campaign.
Sure. Yeah.
Try to make the campaign about the journey toward that goal. And I mean, in some cases, give it to them and see what happens.
Yeah. It could be interesting.
It could be interesting as long as you have an escape plan. If it does not go the way that you thought it would, I swear, for every goal, there is a way to make the player regret that goal.
Sure.
You know. All right. Well, I think that'll do it for the regular questions for today. Because that one took up a while. But I want to talk about our weekly discussion, our social media discussion question. So last week, the question was, you have to erase one core class from D&D. What class do you choose and why? Do you recall what you said?
I think I said sorcerer, but only because like, one, I'm not as familiar with them. And then like, I kind of, in my mind, they're just wizards, but like less sciencey and like, I don't know.
Sure.
I don't know. They're like wizards with a gimmick or something like that.
Yeah.
But again, I'm not familiar. So, you know, sorry.
Sure. And then I said rangers because I number one, I don't like nature classes. And number two, everything the ranger does, I feel like somebody else does something better. We got a few responses, and one thing, maybe I haven't made this clear, but there was a bit of an argument between a couple people on Facebook. It's not anything big, but I just want to say, I don't want anyone to say that if someone responds to this, I don't want anybody else to say that they're wrong. Like, this is not about what's right or wrong. This is all about opinions. I want people's opinions on, I want people's opinions on what your opinion is, you know. So first I'll talk about on Facebook. We had actually several responses from Chris. I think he probably could have gotten all these in one, but he did it separate. So he said, First Chris said fighter. If we're talking 3.5, the fighter's kind of useless after 5th level. I can totally get behind that.
I can see that just because it's like you're getting more feats and like
pretty much everybody already gets a lot of feats in 3rd edition.
And at a certain point, you're getting like just a feat that gives you an extra +1 or something.
Yeah, that was kind of the whole point of the Book of Nine Swords was they were like, let's make fighters not suck.
Yeah.
But then he also said in 4th edition, Seeker gets the strap. The Seeker had mechanics designed to shoot itself in the foot, pun intended. I think they had something where if they take damage or something, I don't know. I'm not too familiar with Seeker, but
I don't know that one.
And then in 5th edition, probably go with Monk because they somehow managed to make it underpowered again. And then he also added in 2nd edition, the Bard. They were too unfocused and kind of weak sauce.
Yeah, I from the little bit I've played of 2nd edition, and then like a lot of the video games I used to play that were based on D&D were through 2nd edition, like the old Baldur's Gate and stuff.
Yeah. So the little argument, quote unquote, that came up was because Jeremiah on Facebook said monk. It wasn't just that he said monk; it was that he said that they're really underpowered. Which, I mean, Chris had already said, but whatever. But then several people were like, oh, no, the monk isn't underpowered. It can do this, this, and this. And so, you know, I'm not looking for, I think monk, for whatever reason, is a perfectly good response. So, you know, I have nothing wrong with discussion. If you want to discuss it, sure. But I don't want anybody to feel like they, like, you know, this is grounds for an argument.
Well, I'm pulling one I'm pulling one of the responses here. It's just like, but a properly built monk can 4-shot a Tarrasque.
And then I responded to that saying a 1st level tiefling cleric can kill the Tarrasque without taking a hit. So that's not a huge accomplishment in and of itself. I just had to throw that jab with the Tarrasque in there. Anyway, so yeah, Jeremiah said monk. He said the only way to really take advantage of their skills multi-classing, which I don't know enough about the monk to say whether that is correct or incorrect, but that's not the point.
Right, you know. And then like if you're multi-classing, like it's still a way to use a class in a way. But
sure,
but anyway.
Sure. Sean M said rogue. Too much imbalance in every version, it seems. I can kind of get behind that. I don't know if I agree with it being imbalanced, but I know a lot of people feel like it is.
Sure.
So Adam B said Ranger in 5th edition, purely to allow them to sort out the current imbalance problems. I have heard, that's one thing I forgot to mention about the Ranger. I I've heard from multiple sources, if there is a weakest class in 5th edition, it's the Ranger, the base Ranger. It's been like the Unearthed Arcana Ranger, I guess, is like really good, but the base Ranger isn't. You know, that's up for debate. I'm not saying that is definitely true or not.
Like thematically, I do like Ranger a lot, which is why I didn't put that on the list. But I feel like I would agree that it's not. It's like like the 5th edition one has not drawn me in. Like I want to have a Ranger character, but when I look at the stats, I'm like, what does Warlock have?
Yeah. Jonathan says, for 5th edition, I would take the Monk or Ranger out because I believe the Fighter does an adequate job at what those classes do. So, and then, RJ says Monk. So a lot of people seem to be saying Monk. Some people saying Ranger.
Some like it's like, some of like the secondary martial classes or something like that, I guess. Again, sorry if anybody really likes those classes.
Yeah.
Because you can do a lot of stuff with Fighter. And like, I don't know. Like, Monk and Ranger, like I think as far as theme goes, they're top tier for me.
Sure.
Like I like the idea of Monk and I love the idea of Ranger, but like anytime I go to like make a character with one of those classes, I usually end up multi-classing.
Yeah.
So I don't know.
Yeah. Over on Reddit, we got Kryptonic 901 saying Monk, you know, and then Prosno agreed. Monks.
Oh, no.
You know, a lot of people just kind of keep saying Monk. And then Vincent Takeda said Fighter. And his argument was, I mean, everyone's a fighter. Some are like ragey barbarians, some are holy cleric fighters, some are magic fighters, and so on and so on. Prosno actually makes a pretty good argument for why you should keep the fighter because it's kind of the base for everything. You know, but the argument could be made that if it is the base for everything, why do you still need it when you've got everything?
Sure.
You know? And then Creepy Bob says Warlock. They are popular with players, but I've never seen anyone stay happy with them. Eventually, they're just blast in combat with odd utility spells.
Oh, I love that though.
I mean, that's true. And then he says roleplay wise, they don't have training and the earning it background that wizards and clerics do. I can get behind that, but at the same time, that's why I like warlocks. I like how you don't have to have trained to be a warlock. You could literally be just like this evil power showed up and made me this offer and I was scared. So I said yes.
Yeah. You can make a warlock that like, you know, like background wise makes sense that it could be like a kid.
Yeah.
Like you could have a very young child who is a warlock of like, you know, 7th level or something.
Sure.
And it makes sense because they've been gifted this, or they've been, you know, given this power from some other being.
I also really like the idea that you don't have to be on good terms with your patron.
Right.
Like a cleric, their power can be taken away if they defy their deity or whatever. Patrons explicitly do not have that. Your patron gave you the power and it's yours now.
Right.
Like maybe you can't level up if you anger your patron or whatever, but in theory, you could have a warlock that hates their patron. Or you could have a warlock whose patron lied to them about what they were.
Right. Yeah.
I've given the idea a long time ago about a warlock that thinks that they are
paladin.
They think they're a paladin. Exactly.
Yeah.
They think they've made a pact with an angel. They actually made a pact with a demon or something. Yeah. So I think there's just so much role-playing potential for the warlock. But then again, I've never played one for a long enough period of time to know how well it works.
Right. I feel like, like there's a lot of good potential there. And it is sort of just blast with utility, but that's at least viable. You know, you can get through a campaign with that and still have an interesting story. Whereas like something like the Monk and Ranger, I guess, is like, I think they're cool stories, but like, you know, it's kind of tough to keep up I guess with some of the abilities that they get or rather don't.
Yeah. And then we have one more on Twitter. This one is, should I say his name or he asked not to?
Yeah. Anonymous.
From Anonymous. The Anonymous's response was, Monk, get some equipment, you nerd. Followed by him asking me not to credit him. So,
because he doesn't want hate mail.
Yes. I mean, so please don't go to Twitter and look at who that was.
Oh goodness. Whoops.
No, it's no, it's
well,
I think it's funny.
I mean, obviously this is a hypothetical. Nobody really wants people to get rid of, like, we don't want to get rid of Monk.
Sure.
in most cases, people are saying monk because they think they're underpowered and they'd like them to be not underpowered.
Yeah.
They, in a lot of when people are upset about a thing, in most cases, it's because they want that thing to be better, or at least they want it to be better for them.
Yeah, that's a good distinction to make.
Right.
Okay, so for the upcoming weekly discussion question, I think the question is going to be, if you had to add a class or archetype to D&D, what would you add? Originally, I was actually going to have it be if you had to add a class, but that's hard to say, because what if you just have like an idea for a type of thing? Yeah. It could very easily fit into an archetype along with an existing class.
Yeah,
so
that's good. Yeah.
So if you had to add a class or archetype to D&D, what would you add?
I have a way to make the monk better.
Okay.
Super Saiyan.
Okay. That's something.
You become the Goku.
Have you seen the Sun Soul Monk?
I guess that is sort of like
they get energy blasts.
But I feel like I don't know, they could go a little bit further and give them the spiky yellow hair.
They could always go a little bit further.
Yeah.
I would have to say, it would be nice if there was some sort of an artificer.
Yeah, I feel like it's always on the back of their mind, or it's like in our Unearthed Arcana or something, isn't there?
There's an unofficial. It is in Unearthed Arcana. Yeah, so it's an unofficial artificer.
I've always liked the idea of artificer. Although I've seen several different versions of it since I first saw it in Eberron, and there's always some weird variation on it that some of them I don't like, some of them I do. Like there was, I think the Pathfinder one was a bit different, and I don't remember if I liked it much. There was something to do with it had it had like a weapon, like an alchemical gun basically that you leveled up. That was sort of their main gimmick or something.
Who would want to play an artificer with a gun?
Gabe.
Oh yeah, as a joke, because my first Eberron character was an artificer and
it had a gun.
He did have a gun. Yeah. It wasn't like an alchemical gun; it was just a gun.
Just a gun.
But yeah. Anyway, another thing that I would say that I would add is this is an archetype specifically, but why has there never been a warlock that summons a demon pet? In 4th edition, there were so many different types of, several different types of warlock you could play. There were several different types of ranger. One of the rangers got a pet, like in World of Warcraft.
Right.
The warlock never did. The warlock even got the freaking soul drain thing that warlocks got from World of Warcraft.
Right.
But they never implemented a pet.
Yeah. Some sort of fiendish, familiar or something like that.
Yeah.
Well, you get
you can get a familiar. I guess one that is like something that you could tank with if you needed to.
Exactly, like an animal companion, but Ranger doesn't get an animal companion, or does one of the archetypes do?
I think one of the archetypes does.
Like the Beastmaster or something.
I think so. Yeah.
Okay. I can't remember if it was on the podcast or in conversation with somebody else. I think I misspoke and said you don't get animal companions as a ranger. But I guess it's not. It's not guaranteed.
Sure, it's not part of the base.
Right.
The base class.
I feel like maybe if that was part of the base class, and then you got the archetypes on top of that,
that would be cool.
That might help them out.
I would play that. But in Pathfinder, there is the summoner class where you make. You design a second character, essentially, that is a monster. You have points to spend on abilities and such. Oh, I love that class. I think it's so cool.
Boat or something.
Oh yeah, the pirate that his he would summon a demon boat. It was this tiny little boat. He would squeeze into the captain's compartment, and he would ride around on it. I loved that.
Yeah, your summon was also a ship.
Yes,
that's funny.
No, but seriously, I love that idea of this is a demonic pet that is bound to me. I have control over how it grows and everything. I love that idea.
Yeah, I feel like that's the archetypes with stuff like that where summons. I think they've sort of stepped away from them because Druid doesn't have an animal companion.
Yeah,
and Ranger doesn't always can't only with one archetype could they have an animal companion.
Well, Druids there's I guess it's not an animal companion, but there is the Circle of the Shepherd. I think where you get 6,000 pets that all can act in the same round or something like that. There's this one druid archetype that you get so many animal companions. They're all really weak, but you get like you can attack with like a ton of them in a round.
I guess because I've looked at that and like I remember looking at it and being like, oh, that looks really, I like that because you can like speak with animals and stuff that. But then like I remember reading and thinking, I was like, oh, that's not that strong.
Yeah,
maybe I'm misinformed.
I don't know. Well, anyway, so that was the question. If you could add a class or archetype to D&D, what would you add?
Yeah.
So check our Facebook, check our Twitter, check our subreddit, and reply to that on the platform of your choice. So I guess that'll do it for questions for today. So let's take a deep breath. Let's sit back. Let's relax. Let's remember the people who have come before us as we toss another log onto the funeral pyre. So our funeral pyre story for this episode comes from Amanda via email. And Amanda says, I haven't been playing D&D very long, and I haven't experienced a death of my personal character, so this story will be about a party member character death. I think it was actually my second session playing along with the group, so I was mostly just following everyone around and trying to learn the game. And hey, yeah, you do that. That happens sometimes.
Yep.
A person in the group was playing a halfling fighter who came from a wealthy family and acted as if they were better than everyone else in the party. He wouldn't take watch, he wouldn't accept help from anyone, and he was a bit too bold for his tiny size. Our group had traveled to an underground lake, and while we were on the edge of the lake, we heard the croaking of a giant frog. Everyone in the party backed away from the lake, but the halfling ran forward and demanded the frog be quiet. Basically, the frog ate the halfling and swam away. I was playing a druid and was scrambling to figure out a way to save the halfling, but the rest of the party had grown tired of the halfling's silver spoon-fed attitude and let the frog take him. The group I'm playing with has an obvious grudge against small-sized characters, and it seems the DM specifically targets them, so the player will stop choosing them, yet she still continues to play them. They complain that small characters are too easy to kill, pointing out that they can be eaten by frogs. But I like to point out the player was actually playing their character true to form. It just so happened he was reckless and got eaten.
Right.
So yeah, I think that's a lot of fun. I think the idea of a party, of a player group that has a grudge against small-sized characters, that's something
interesting
right there. I mean, it might have to do with Kender. Maybe Kender from Dragonlance.
I don't know.
I'll have to show you something after this episode's over. Anyway, so yeah, that was the story from Amanda. So let us raise a glass in memory of the bold halfling who got caught totally off guard.
Oh,
clink. That was good.
Although the giant toad is a large creature and can eat medium-sized creatures.
Oh, that's pretty crazy. In the game that we ran today, the players were fought by they fought a bunch of giant eagles. I realized after the encounter was over, they were large sized. I thought they were medium at biggest. Like large size.
That's
Anyway, so that'll do it for today. To submit questions for us to discuss, items for the Dragon's Hoard, or stories for the funeral pyre, please email us at interpartyconflict@gmail.com. For show notes, links to media mentioned on the show, and running lists of questions and magic items, go to interpartyconflict.com. Join the discussion on social media. Find us on Facebook, facebook.com/interpartyconflict, our subreddit at reddit.com/r/interpartyconflict, or on Twitter at InPartyConflict for our weekly social media questions. Your answers might end up on the show. Find us on iTunes, Google Play Music, Stitcher, YouTube, anywhere you download podcasts. Please rate, review, subscribe, or just tell a friend. If you'd like to support the show, check out the rewards at patreon.com/interpartyconflict. There's a few different tiers, so anything you can spare, even $1 a month, would go towards making the show better, and you'll get bonus content for it. Jeff, tell us about FriendQuest.
FriendQuest is a YouTube channel where we play video games. We'll probably be doing a arcade game stream on there sometime soon.
Yeah, I am thinking Labor Day. Is probably the best day for me. That'll give me enough time to make sure I can get the setup right. Make sure I want to probably do a test stream the week before.
Cool.
So yeah, hopefully that'll be a lot of fun.
Yep. And then I'm also in talks with a buddy of mine to kind of help me get the channel moving a little bit.
Awesome.
So we'll see how that goes.
Cool. And if you'd like to submit some of your childhood memories of going to the arcade, either write them to us in an email or record it yourself and send it to me at arcadememoriespodcast@gmail.com. Also, head over to bit.ly/InterPartyConflict to take a short survey about our show. What you like, what you don't like, etc. And just for taking it, you'll get 2 free printable board games courtesy of Mary and Tom over at hollandspiel.com. And our music is made by Boxcat Games from Nameless the Hacker's RPG. So, Jeff, until next time...
Wait, hold on. I got a frog in my throat. Sorry. What were we saying?
Nothing.